Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Rhonda.
My name is Rhonda Daly. I'm an alcoholic. Can you hear me? That's what I wanted to know. Thank Joey for asking me to share tonight. Thank my friend Keith for meeting me in the parking lot to make sure I came in to fulfill the commitment. It's always nice to see Jerry at a meeting. He could tell my story, but he's going to let me do it tonight. And someone named Jeff told me not to screw it up. I spoke here 29 years ago. This is the first time you've asked me back. So I said, what are you going to do? Wait another 29 years? You know, it's So I'll tell you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And I'll thank the people who did that before me. When I became an alcoholic in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I wasn't an alcoholic when I got here. I knew that if I drank, I'd fix, but I just didn't know that if you couldn't drink, you were an alcoholic. It never, well, I didn't know anything when I got here. I had never even turned on any utilities. You know, my sponsor says, some people come from farther behind, Rhonda. And that's her description of me. So I was brought up in the Hollywood Hills. I always thought my parents were Ozzie and Harriet Nelson, and Ozzie would go to the pantry, pour a tumbler full of vodka, drink it down, and have a personality change. But I never saw anything the way it was. They did the best that they could with my brother and I. I was one of those kids who rode horses up in Burbank and walked the rent horses dry. I went to Hollywood High School and LeConte Junior High School. I got sober when I turned 27 years old in Camarillo State Hospital, and so so now I'm 66 years old, 39 years sober. Millie Greenberg's my. Thank you very much for those years. Millie Greenberg's my sponsor, and 6 years ago I went to the Pacific Group, and that's the status for now. But so I was going to LeConte Junior High School, and the first time I started drinking when I was 13 years old. The first time I drank, it was God, I'm so anxious tonight. Oh, I don't blow. Gin and Tom Collins mix, and I never drank gin again. I had a hangover when I was 13 years old. I drank it in the back seat of some lowrider's car with somebody else's boyfriend. And I started doing things I was sorry for. So drink, be sorry. You know, drugs, sit still. You know, and I'm better off drooling than moving around. I was going to LeConte Junior High School, then Hollywood High School. When I was 16 years old, my dad bought me a 49 Chevy, and it was lowered to the ground, and I thought I was so cool. I had this lowrider boyfriend, and we hung out in Cahuenga Park, and all of the guys smoked pot, and they didn't give us any. They told us that they were protecting us, you know, and then we learned they were selfish little bastards, and I can remember going to visit this lowrider guy in county jail, and my mother was just appalled. She said, Jesus, you're going to county jail? Your boyfriend's in jail? And I thought to myself, Jesus, he's only in for burglary. It's not like he really did anything, you know. And he wanted to get married, but he was too short and I was too shallow. So it didn't work out. And when I graduated from, I went back to school and graduated from Hollywood High from let's see. When I was 18 years old, I changed crowds again, and I got an ID that said I was 22. I went to work at a place called Magoo's on Hollywood Boulevard. I was working 3 jobs, Magoo's, the Iris Theater, and Prudential Insurance Company, and I quit all of the jobs except the one at Magoo's. And when I was 18 years old, I started drinking on a daily basis. When I was 18 years old, I started smoking pot on a daily basis. When I was 18 years old, I started stealing on a daily basis. I don't know why 18 was downhill, but it certainly was. And I was always prided myself on my honesty, but now I'm padding your checks in case you don't tip me. And I'm so busy that I just put all the money in the drawer. And my idea of moving out of my parents' house is moving in with you. And the more the merrier, because the less the rent. And that's the way I moved out. I got arrested for the first time when I was 18 years old also. I had 2 joints in my bra, and at that time they took you right to jail, and I can remember figuring out the problem, and I thought, I'm never going to carry more than I could eat, you know, and I knew, and I would roll up 20 joints because I knew I could eat them if I had to, you know, and just start the day that way. And then it turned into the 60s, and I always say, thank God, if it had been the 50s, I'd have been a slut, but it was the 60s. We made love, not war. It was just perfect. Nobody really expected you to be conscious for any long periods of time. I worked on the Sunset Strip when it was still fun. I'm the only person I know who got I'm the only person I know who got fired from the whiskey in the 60s for drugs. You know, it's not. It wasn't easy, and I worked at a place called The Trip, where I can Tina Turner. No, the Temptations played at The Trip, but I only worked there for half a night because you just can't go to work that loaded. I worked at Ciro's for either 3 months or 3 weeks, who knows. And Ike and Tina Turner played there during that time, I remember that. And then I got my very favorite job of all times. I worked at a place called the Roaring Twenties on La Cienega Boulevard. My job was to wear a fringed bathing suit and swing 20 feet in the air. You know, God, I was so qualified. And smoke pot and a few drinks, and it's my favorite job to this day, I'll tell you that. And I was supposed to swing for 45 minutes and come down for 45 minutes, but if I came down, people could touch me, and I didn't like to be touched. So I would stay up there the whole 5-hour shift. And they would start hollering at me. Things like, we're going to get the ladder. You know, it's like, you get the ladder, but I'm not coming down. And, I always like to remember the second to last place I worked, things had changed. I worked at some topless bar under the Pasadena freeway as a bikini barmaid the day shift. It doesn't get grimmer than that. So the people, can I get some water? Somebody, thank you. Thanks, Vivian. So my friends were people who wanted to do something. They did extra work in the movies. They were musicians. Some of them made it big. Everybody had some ambition. You know, all I wanted out of life was a party and a suntan. That didn't seem a lot to ask. And, I would drive around, and I got to drink in the good bars when I was younger because I drank with Leslie's dad, but I drank when I was paying for it myself. Red Mountain was $1.25 a gallon, and I would fill up a Dr. Pepper bottle, and I would just drive around and smoke joints with it between my legs and go visiting people. It was almost a career. Unfortunately, they came out with a drug called LSD. And I was never all here to begin with, and I never should have taken that drug. And one night I was being reborn at an incredible speed. And I lost my mind. And I wanted them to call an ambulance, but they were afraid they'd get arrested. And I went to visit my childhood friend Leslie. She was a patient in the Neuropsychiatric Institute at UCLA. She'd had a nervous breakdown. And I can remember walking in there and saying, Jesus, I shouldn't be a visitor here. I should be a patient, you know. And they took me. I'm one of the 3 people I know in Alcoholics Anonymous who've played volleyball on Thorazine. It's a very slow game. Over and over and over again. And I can remember thinking, this is so stupid, but I just kept playing. And that started the years of the Thorazine, the Mellaril, the Artane, the Stelazine, the Valium, and that's Rhonda getting through life, you know. And I started using heroin sometime in my early 20s. I can't tell you when. This guy I went to high school with pulled out an outfit, and I put out my arm, and he fixed me. And apparently I turned purple and fell over. And they thought I'd overdosed, and I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. Difference of opinion of what happened that night. For me, that started the years of getting strung out, and then cleaning up and getting a job, and then starting to take some kind of stimulants to go to work, because work is hard, and then drinking every night to come off of those stimulants, and then I would start taking some kind of downers. Then I would fix, and then I would have a habit, and then I would clean up and get a job, and then I would start taking some stimulants to go to work, and then I'd drink every night, and then, you know, just over and over and over again, and I couldn't even see what had happened. I couldn't even see that it was a pattern. I didn't even, you know, I couldn't figure out what had happened to this, you know. It seemed like I was, at one time I was a decent person, but now I live like this. My brother and I drank and used together. I got arrested again, and my mother came to visit me in the Women's County Jail, Sybil Brand, and I wanted her to say, I'm going to bail you out, and what she said was, I can sleep nights, honey. And Dad doesn't want you to be bailed out. But bless her heart, she bailed me out anyway. And I moved to Hawaii to become Queen of the Islands when I was 19 years old. I didn't know what she did, but I could kind of hear Hawaiian music in the background and picture these leis around my neck. And then that didn't work out very well, and I moved to New York. By then, I only wanted to be a dope dealer. And I lasted there 2 weeks. I didn't go on vacation, I moved there. I came home after 2 weeks because that didn't work out very well. I moved to San Francisco maybe 3 or 4 times in a 2-month period, each time thinking things would be different, but that's because of the LSD. And then I had one more idea, and the idea was I was going to Las Vegas, but this time I was coming back with diamonds and minks. I mean, I could feel the mink coat on my shoulders because it wasn't politically incorrect to feel it, and I could just see the diamonds on my fingers, and I gave away all my hippie clothes and jewelry, and I bought pantyhose and high heels and cocktail dresses, and off to Las Vegas I went. And that didn't work out very well. I didn't have the money to drink the way I needed to drink, so I started drinking scotch because I didn't like the taste, and I started drinking it tall, hoping it would last. And people said things to me like, Jesus, you drink so fast, and I'm thinking, I'm going as slow as I can, you know, and I just... And I came back from there a broken woman. When I came back, I didn't think anything was ever going to be any different. That was the last hope. And I moved to Laguna Beach, not because things were going to be different, but because I had one more group of people to take me in. You know, I lived in a garage. There were 4 beds in the garage, and the rest of the people, there were beds in the single, or studio, I don't know which it is if you have a kitchen. And I got a job down there. I worked at some kind of coffee shop on the beach. The lady I worked with was an alcoholic. Everybody knew that because she drank at the bar across the street. I wasn't an alcoholic because I drank at the bar closest to where we lived. Then I started stopping off with her and then going to the other bar. Then I met a 17-year-old kid who was the connection. I was 26 years old, but that's all you had to be. And I started coming up to Los Angeles on the weekends from Laguna. And he said really stupid things to me, like, if you're not careful, you're going to get strung out. And I just wanted to take him by his shirt and say, if you only knew, I'm going to use everything we have as fast as I can. And yes, because it's all over, you just don't know it yet. But I didn't want to scare him because I needed him. And so I lived with him in Silver Lake. In 1971, we had a tremendous earthquake. Now you guys know what I'm talking about because we've had some more. But everything started to shake, and this kid got really scared because he still wanted to live. And I got peaceful. I was like a breath of fresh air. I felt the first peace I'd felt in ever, maybe. I thought, oh my God, it's all going to be over, and I'm not going to live like this animal I've become. And the earthquake stopped, and we fixed, and life went on. And the next thing that happened was a kid came with a gun, and I can remember he put it to my head like this, and I could actually hear my knees knock together. And then all of a sudden, I had felt the same peace I'd felt during the earthquake. This guy was going to do for me what I couldn't do for myself, and I wasn't going to have to live this way anymore, and it was a relief. But he took what we had, and he left, and I ended up in this house in Hollywood with a 17-year-old and his aunts, and who knows who else lived in the house. I certainly don't. I got thrown out of West Hollywood mental health. I can remember my mother took me home one time because I'd been unconscious for a few days. She worried about those things. And she called Suicide Prevention Center. And I can remember telling them, I'm not trying to kill myself. I just need to get away for a few days, and I don't have the money for a vacation, because I was writing my own prescriptions for Tuinals. And so this is my idea of recovery at the time. So I got thrown out of West Hollywood mental health, and I went to Venice mental health, and they took me, and the guy in Venice said there was a place in Camarillo where there were no drugs. I couldn't believe there was any place on earth where there weren't any. And to be a total disappointment to my parents, I asked them for a ride up to the state mental institution. And they gave me a ride, and I went in there, and I was going to get it together in 3 days, and then I was going to get it together in 2 weeks, and probably stay a month, maybe finish the short-term program. And when I was in there 60 days, this woman said to me, 90 days isn't long enough. And here came the surrender, because for some reason I believed her. And I would rather take the short road to hell than the long road to happiness. Believe me, I'm a woman in a hurry. Even to this day, I can't wait to get to the meeting. I can't wait for the coffee break. I can't wait for the break to be over. Can't wait for the speaker to start. Can't wait for the speaker to end. Can't wait to get home. Can't wait to get to the meeting. Just goes on and on and on. Never ending. And so all in all, I spent 14 months in this program, and they didn't have the language of the heart. It was patterned after Synanon, attack therapy, nose and toes to the wall, wearing signs. Oh, yes. I had signs from my chin to my ankles because I had a bad memory. And the more signs I wore, the worse my memory got, because now I'm forgetting the signs. But anyway, that's another story. I was there 14 months, and we had a participant observer, a clean and sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he was doing research on the program. And we used to say really goofy things. We'd say things to him, and he would say goofy things to us, like they would tease him about Alcoholics Anonymous. They'd tell him AA was a crutch, and he would say, if it's a crutch, then I'll take two. And just really stupid things like that. And I went to, there was no sober living then, so I went to a halfway house. And I came to you for 2 reasons. No language of the heart. I did not think in terms of clean and sober. It never even occurred to me. In this program, you could drink 6 months after you got out of there. Those people that drank are all gone, by the way. There's only 2 of us left, really, and the program was there for a few years. I came to you because I met my husband there, and I thought we programmed well together, and if we could keep programming, maybe I could have a relationship that lasted. And the other reason was I was having what I know now are panic attacks. I would wake up in the middle of the night. My eyes must have looked like a dog on a freeway. And Doug would say to me, what are you afraid of? And I would think, if I just had a clue. But I had no idea. And those are the reasons I came to you. And we started going to the Malibu meetings. And at the time, there were women in pink coats with big diamonds then. And big fancy cars in the parking lot, Mercedes-Benz and Cadillacs. And they kept saying, if you want what we have, and keep coming back. Boy, I wanted what they had. And this woman, Burl, was my first sponsor. She was Glenn's wife, the man who took us who was the participant observer. And the first time I did anything on the program was I was really angry at somebody, and she said, "Why don't you pray for them?" Why would she say that to me? Yeah. So I explained her the situation again, and she said, "Just pray for them." And I can remember thinking, God, maybe there is such a thing as a wet brain. And so I explained it to her one more time, and she said, "Just pray for the son of a bitch." Finally, something I could understand. I had written my inventory, so I changed sponsors because this lady seemed like a nice lady. And I just couldn't see reading that to her. And that's when I got Tanya Gates for a sponsor, and she would never let me take myself seriously. I had a Volkswagen that I'd had when I was drinking and using. The hood was tied down with a dog chain. You know, it was just full of dents. If you looked at it, you would say that person drinks wine and takes Reds. You know? And so we were going to trade it in and get a new truck, and I asked Tanya, do you think it's a good idea to get this truck? And she said, go ahead and get the truck. If you're not supposed to have it, it'll be taken away from you. You know, and everything I've approached with that attitude, if you're not supposed to have it, it'll be taken away from you, and being willing to let go of it, it seems like I can have it. I didn't feel like things were, really wasn't happy, but I figured out the problem. I told you how good I am at that. And what I needed was a baby. Because if I had a baby, I'd feel like an adequate woman. So we tried for a year, and finally ruined our sex life with that. You can't try that hard. Finally, I got pregnant, and my very first thought was, in 9 months, I get some medication. You know, normal people don't think that way. And we went to natural childbirth classes, and Trav was born. And after he was born, I remembered I'd never liked children. They had always made me nervous, you know, and they're loud, and I knew he was coming home from the hospital because we had a room for him. But what I didn't understand was after you had a baby, it was all about them. You know, I was dumbfounded, to say the least. I have a picture of Tanya finishing his first bath. I didn't bathe him again for a week. Way too much for me. But things were going to be, I met my husband there, my ex-husband, and things were going to be different when Doug finished college. Things were going to be different when Doug finished law school. Things were going to be different when Doug passed the bar. Things were going to be different when Doug got a job, and then all of that happened, and things were different. He left, and they were really different. I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I couldn't believe that I was a single mother, a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought this should happen to people who didn't go to regular meetings and didn't work the steps and didn't sponsor people and who weren't sponsored and who weren't a part of AA and who didn't have commitments, but it certainly shouldn't happen to me. Apparently life we talk about AA, life on life's terms, and I always think of it as shit happens. It's my version of it. It almost killed me. The divorce almost killed me. I lost 30 pounds, and I went to meetings, but I was shaking and sweating, and I couldn't see straight. I couldn't even figure out, in retrospect, it was probably, someone would have called it a nervous breakdown. I carried around, I'm not even Catholic, but I carried around a rosary. At the end of 3 years, all that was left was part of the cross, because I had a death grip on it for 3 years. And I went to see my sponsor, and I said, "Georgie, what happened to my marriage? I can't believe it." And she said, "Rhonda, you were both sick. You met in Camarillo State Hospital." And I thought, Jesus, she was always so smart, and now that I need her, she's lost it. The boys and I moved to, when I had about 5 years of sobriety, my brother died of an overdose. And he left 2 toddlers, and I just couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe in a God that took a 28-year-old young man with 2 toddlers. His friends drove him to the hospital. He was overdosed, and they called emergency and left him in his truck. And the emergency people came and got him, and he was on a ventilator for about 18, 19 days, and then they took him off the ventilator, and he died. And my mother and father could not believe that anybody could be so cruel as to leave somebody in a parking lot like that. The kind of animal I'd become when people had overdosed. My suggestion was to wrap them in a carpet and drop them off on the side of a freeway. So when I tell you I had become an animal, I am not kidding. me first, and if I'm still awake when you get yours, I'll try to help you if you overdose. Not a good way to live. People gave me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation all of the time in the end. My idea of a good time was an overdose. If I was still awake, something was wrong with the evening. And it was just too much for me. And that's the way I came, that's the way I came to you. The boys and I, the first 3 years, I couldn't tell if it was an acid flashback or if it was really happening. That was the big question in my life. And you taught me to act as if. So I acted as if I was sane. And I would think about, no one told me, let us love you till you love yourself. They told me, ask yourself what a grown-up would do, Rhonda. Say, what would I do if I was an adult? And when something happened, I would ask myself that question. I would say, what would Harriet Nelson do? What would Jane Wyatt do under these circumstances? And I would try to emulate them. The kids and I moved up to Alaska because my childhood friend was up there, and I'd gotten laid off. Now I'm working at UCLA as a tester on a research grant for early onset schizophrenia. I'm actually picking up patients on the unit that I was a patient on. It's like, how do you get there from here? Only in Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought that I'd gone up on vacation to Juneau for a couple of years, and I thought Mr. Wright was waiting for me in Alaska, and I was down here, and some star-struck something was not going to happen. And so I took the boys up there, and I always quote my friend Nikki about the men in Alaska, because she told me the odds are good, but the goods are odd. I dated a man up there for 2 years. He didn't want anything from a relationship, and I had nothing to give, so we were the perfect couple. I came back from there, and when I had 20 years of sobriety, things started to go wrong with my health. Eddie Cochran, when I got out of that drug program, there were no NA meetings in Ventura County, and a man named Eddie Cochran, who died with 40-some-odd years of sobriety, and Dave Hamza, with a group of us that got out of that program, we started the NA meetings up there at the time. You couldn't tell the difference between the AA and NA unless you listened to the readings, and then all of that changed over the years. But Eddie had said when he had 20 years of sobriety, it was the worst year of his life. You told me if I went to regular meetings on regular meeting nights, God would provide the speaker and the message. Sometimes the message doesn't come from the speaker. Sometimes it comes from someone I meet at the break. Sometimes it comes from someone I'm in the thank you line with. It just comes. If I'm where I'm supposed to be, then God provides the message. So I was at that meeting, and Eddie told me his 20th year was his worst year, and I really needed to know that at the time, because when I had 20 years of sobriety, I started having these health problems, and I can remember Eddie saying, I'd lost all hope, and I remember Eddie saying his 20th year was his worst year, and I really needed to know that. The other thing that Eddie told me when I was new, I'll share this with you because it's helped me all these years. He's told me that, yeah, but was the mating call of the asshole. And I have never said that again. So, it'll give you some, it's food for thought over the years, trust me. I spent a few years in and out of a walker in a wheelchair. I've had like over 30 back surgeries. It was just a nightmare. 2.5 years ago, I was on a cane and I was bent over and I cried all the time. And I had one more surgery and they broke my back and reset it. And now I rock when I talk to you so it doesn't lock up. But I can stand up straight and I can walk and I don't need the cane and I don't need the walker. And I had given up all hope. When I had 25 years of sobriety, I had to move in with my mother. And when I spoke to you then, I would get up to the podium and I would tell you, hang in there, work the steps, help other people, and maybe when you have 25 years, you can move in with your mother. I can't promise you, but hang in there, and I was suicidal there for 3 years, and every day I'd have to come up with a reason not to kill myself, and sometimes it would be because you can't I share this because we get depressed, and people kill themselves on this program. Maybe one day I wouldn't do it because a kid never gets over the suicide of a parent, and maybe one day I wouldn't do it because it's not fair for my mother to have 2 dead children, and maybe one day I wouldn't do it because AA had never let me down. Why would it let me down now? And I moved out of there, and I've been living in the same place for the last 12 years. And I'm feeling better than I have in the last 20. Who knows? I have no idea. Both of my boys are clean and sober. Where's Aaron? They tried to get... Where are you, sweetheart? You tried to get sober at the same time, and Trav has 13 years of sobriety. 13 years ago, he needed a public defender, and today he is a public defender. Trent, he lives in Ohio with his wife. I have a grandson that's going to be 14 this month. The little guy turned 3, and the other one just turned 5. And I told you, I never liked children until I had grandchildren, you know, and now I even like your children. I'm so glad I turned out to be a good grandmother. When the first one moved up from Brazil, he had 2 years. I wasn't ready to be a grandmother. I thought maybe he should call me Mrs. Daly, but he calls me Grandma. And, so I came to you, and my idea of a good time was an overdose. I could not stand to be awake for this life. When I got out of that program, and if I hadn't come to you, I don't know what would have happened to me. The panic attack returned. I was just wandering around. You've taught me how to live and be happy about it most of the time. You know, the first time I heard this noise, and I wondered what it was, and it was me laughing, you know, because it had been so long since I'd heard that sound. And I laugh out loud all of the time now. All I can do is say thank you. First of all, I never thought I'd live past 25. And after I got sober, I never thought I'd get old. This is a real surprise. Wait till it happens to you. I want you to think about me. So think of it as a wish, not a curse. Anyway, I want to thank Joey for asking me to speak. I'm done, so I'm not going to ramble. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. changes. You can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.